March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is about the disease of addiction and how it affects families, how it affects the person struggling with the disease. But the purpose of the show is to bring about empowerment and education to anyone and everyone and that is, there is no one that doesn't need to be educated on the disease of addiction. We have to stop assuming that it's not my child. And today I'm going to start the show a little bit differently before I introduce my guests. I have a poem from a very special young lady who lost her battle with the disease. So Lindsay's going to sit right next to me. And Lindsay is the author of this poem. Hello, my name is drugs. I destroy homes, tear families apart, take your children, and that's just the start. I'm more costly than diamonds, more costly than gold. The sorrow I bring is a sight to behold. And if you need me, remember I'm easily found. I live all around you in schools and in town. I live with the rich, I live with the poor, I live down the street and maybe next door. My power is awesome. Try me, you'll see. But if you do, you may never break free. Just try me once and I might let you go, but try me twice and I'll own your soul. When I possess you, you'll steal and you'll lie. You'll do what you have to just to get high. The crimes you'll commit for my narcotic charms will be worth the pleasure you'll feel in your arms. You'll lie to your mother, you'll steal from your dad. When you see their tears, you should feel sad. But you'll forget your morals and how you were raised. I'll be your conscience. I'll teach you my ways. I take kids from parents and parents from kids. I turn people from God and separate friends. I'll take everything from you, your looks and your pride. I'll be with you always, right by your side. You'll give up everything, your family, your home, your friends, your money. Then you'll be alone. I'll take, and you'll have nothing more to give. When I'm finished with you, you'll be lucky to live. If you try me, be warned, this is no game. If given the chance, I'll drive you insane. I'll ravish your body, I'll control your mind. I'll own you completely, your soul will be mine. The nightmares I give you while lying in bed, the voices you'll hear from inside your head, the sweats, the shakes, the visions you'll see, I want you to know these are all gifts from me. But then it's too late, and you'll know in your heart that you are mine and we shall not part. You'll regret that you tried me, they always do. But you came to me, not I to you. You knew this would happen, many times you were told, but you challenged my power and chose to be bold. You could have said no and just walked away. If you could live that day over, now what would you say? I'll be your master, you'll be my slave. I'll even go with you when you go to your grave. Now that you've met me, what will you do? Will you try me or not? It's all up to you. I can bring you more misery than words can tell. Come take my hand, I'll take you to hell. That is written by a very young woman who lost her life just a year ago. This past Sunday, we did a walk to unite Nassau and Suffolk counties in recovery, because there is hope in recovery. And of course, being in the throes of addiction, Lindsay wrote just about that. But that's no joke. in today's paper, on the front page of Newsday, heroin delivered to your home. So it's not just, it's anyone's home. It's anyone's child. It's anyone and anyone, anywhere, anytime. And tonight, I am pleased and honored to have Anthony Rizzuto and Terry Kroll, who is the surprise guest. And what an awesome Sunday we had.
Yeah, it was excellent. I was thrilled with everything. We worked really hard. Terry was just nonstop. I mean, if I had to, taking a look at the planning committee, I mean, Terry was just, the permits. I mean, I can't even start. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is that if you would have told me, I think if you would have tried 10 years ago to get people to go out to a public venue,
yes,
and talk about the loss of a child, or talk about the grips of addiction, or talk about anything along those lines, and tell them to walk 3 miles in memory of, I don't think it would have happened. And I think that, to me, that's one of the gifts that and there was so many gifts that day, but one of them is just this little aha moment to say, oh my God, it's happening. People are coming out and saying, we're not taking this anymore. We want change. Status quo is unacceptable. We're losing too many people. And, I've heard it said before about losing a generation. And this walk, as much as it was to unite Nassau and Suffolk, that's only a piece of it. Mm-hmm. It really was also to bring parents together. It was to bring families together. It was to bring people that are on the fence of whether or not they want to do this recovery thing with people who are in recovery. So there was a lot of
40
different
years
pieces.
and things,
Yeah.
and that's so powerful for someone in their first few months, days, hours, to see that it can be accomplished.
There was a young woman there days.
Yeah.
And she was there with her mom, but she was there.
She was there.
Yeah.
And that has to give a glimmer of hope to her.
And to think, like, even while we're doing this, and someone came up to me and said, we just lost somebody, literally 5 minutes ago. While the event was going on, there was a 23-year-old young lady that lost her battle. And this is the reality of it. But I think that we're getting closer to being able to affect change on a much bigger level. I mean, if you think about it, and I know Terry is very involved with Fed Up, right? And,
yes.
and I'll let her speak to the Fed Up. But, what we did over here, they're hoping to recreate around the country. You want to speak a little bit to that?
I know Philadelphia is next week, and that's their 15th annual walk, and they get well in excess of 20,000 people.
Wow. Wow.
We had over 1,000,
First
which
one.
and that's the first one. So I think that's incredible.
But when we started Fed Up, we were 60 families.
Yeah.
And we were put off by, we were put off by a hurricane. But then the following year, we were 600 families. Not 600 families necessarily affected in that one year, but 600 more families willing to speak out. The next year, we were over 2,000. This year, we expect over 3,000. So this was our first annual walk. What did we think? We thought we'd have 150, 250 people.
Yeah.
And we had 850, 900 people.
Yep, yep.
So imagine now when these people speak up that were there on Sunday and speak about what an awesome event and how healing it feels for everybody, not just for people who lost somebody, not for those families struggling, but healing for the people young in their recovery and healing for the people long-term in their recovery. And, when you talk about Fed Up is nationwide, and we are geared towards making change and specifically with the FDA and in Washington, and it's happening. It's happening slowly, I understand that, but it's happening.
And
I know from speaking at different rehabs when I go to speak to patients there, that the power of the family, hearing what they actually did to their own family, they're not hearing it from their own family, but they accept hearing it from me, that light goes on. So on Sunday, to hear from families, people in recovery, what's going on in their own family, and hopefully that light bulb going on. And then to also see, I have a light at the end of my tunnel. I don't want to go backwards. I don't want my mom and dad to feel like some parents, by losing me. I want to feel like you know, somebody with 40 years, somebody with 20 years, somebody with 2 years.
You know, unfortunately, when you're in the grips of addiction, it really clouds your perception on things. And that's why, for me, it's such an important piece to be able to get in touch with the families, because the families are more reachable. You know, like we have the Narcan right trainings, and we have the Narcan saves, which is awesome. I mean, you know, so many lives have been saved with it. But, you know, I feel like we haven't been able to overcome that hurdle of how do we turn those saves into getting them connected with the help that's necessary to achieve abstinence and then recovery. And I will tell you that I've brought this forward several times. When you're in an emergency room, most of the times a loved one is with them. And approaching the person who's just been saved, they're pretty pissed. They just spent $60 to feel what they were feeling. And even though, like, someone that's not under the grips would say, "Thank you so much, you saved my life. Thank you for saving my life." That's not always the reaction you get. So I think that whenever we can, you know, educate families and empower families and support families. I just was at a meeting today, and a woman said, "How about a sponsor for a family member?" And I said, there is such a thing.
A family peer
yeah, like
support.
people don't know about Al-Anon or Nar-Anon or Families Anonymous. And, you know, I am a huge believer in when there is a person in the home that struggles with the disease of addiction, the whole family is impacted. And it's not just the person that struggles with the addiction that needs to recover. The entire family needs to recover, because the family starts to adapt to the person. When the person is going through it, they start adapting to him. So I think that the family needs some change. So this woman today, you know, she was very, very emotional and very upset with what was going on in her life. Now, if you're a person in recovery, hopefully you've established a sober support group. Hopefully you've gotten a sponsor. You have people that you can go to. It's the same thing for families. But often families feel like it's not me with the problem. As long as they're okay, I'll be okay. That's the biggest line I hear from families. And a lot of times when they come to a support group or to an education series, I truly believe that the reason that they're coming there is to learn, can you teach me how to fix them?
Yeah.
What can I do to help them change? And the reality of it is that you can't change another person. But when the families start taking care of themselves, sometimes it improves the odds of the other person.
Absolutely. You know, you have to, the person struggling can't come home to a household that's willing to enable.
In some cases, that is the case.
Yeah.
And maybe not necessarily knowing they're enabling.
And not,
that's
really the key.
The education side of it that tells the family, if you want to help, then don't try to help so much, because trying to help is
as a mom and dad, we're all parents, so you don't want to see your child struggle.
Right.
You know, one of that issue comes up a lot, right? Because if you love somebody and somebody that you love is hurting, what's natural for us to do? We want to help somebody. Right. We don't want to see them cry. We don't want to see them hurt. We don't want to see them suffer. Helping is not a bad thing. The problem is that often helping becomes enabling. And where does helping end and enabling begin? Helping is not a bad thing. Enabling is a bad thing. And just like a rule of thumb that I use is, helping is when you do something for somebody that they can't do for themselves. Enabling is when you do something for somebody that they should be doing for themselves.
Yes.
And this happens a lot of times because, like, one example might be a person calling up the job and saying, "Oh, he's not feeling well today," and covering for them, or running and paying this for them, or paying that for them, so that they don't have to suffer the consequences.
Making appointments, doing all of those things.
And it's coming from love. It's coming from a place of love.
Without a question.
Yep.
It's that tough spot where you have to let go and let them suffer the consequences,
but it's
or get the gratification that they did a job well done.
But it's not always the parent. You know, we're hearing more and more, the more places that we speak, we have kids coming up to us, children coming up to us.
Yes.
My parents are the ones with the problem. How do I help them?
Oh, yes.
So, you know, now the tables are turned, and how does a child help their parent without enabling? Because enabling is being quiet and not disturbing the apple cart.
And unfortunately, when there's children involved, then they will start to think that that's a normal, that's a normal household.
Right. And you know, one of the other things that I've come across a lot is when families, whether it be a significant other, so a lot of times the people I'll run into will be the wife of somebody who struggles with addiction. But the majority over the last 2 years, I would say 90+% are parents of kids that are struggling with addiction. And as we get into it, what comes out is that there's some guilt.
Yeah.
Because they say, I must not be a good parent. Because if I was a good parent, right, my kid wouldn't be doing that. And that's just not the case. But because there is that guilt, it reminds me kind of like sometimes when you see a couple that gets divorced and the kid goes with one kid, and then when the other parent has them, they just get them everything they want because they only got them on the weekend.
Yeah.
So I see it often that sometimes parents will feel like they played a part in it. So I'm just going to call his boss for him this time. I'm just going to do this for him this time. I'm going to just do this for him this time. And it's really tough because the stigma that's associated with it, right? So you have other people saying, my kid's going to college and my kid's... I was just watching last night on Channel 12, they have like the archives, and I just felt like going on it to see like some of the heroin stuff. And Nora, our friend Milligan, you know, talks about, you have to excuse me, but other people look at their kid's history as when he was in, you know, elementary school and when he was in middle school, and she says, my timeline is when he was in his first rehab, when he was in his second rehab, and that's really something because, like, we can speak about that in our circle.
Yes.
But when you're out there, a lot of people are not comfortable speaking about that because how do you do that? How do you speak and, you know?
Right.
But they should be comfortable.
They should be comfortable.
That's what I see happening now, though. You know, Tim's gone 6 years this past Saturday. 6 years ago, Tim would shout it from the rooftops. We were very honest about what was happening, but we weren't received well. We were shunned at that time. And I see things changing. I do see things changing in the past 6 years. I see that people are able, nobody would have stood out on Sunday like a sore thumb that, you know, you know, here I am with my child.
Right.
I'm standing with my child.
Bringing a little kid.
Right, exactly. You know, you wonder, why wouldn't people speak about this before? That's what I always think. I always think, why couldn't we talk about this before this is a disease? I never saw the stigma until after Timmy died. And then it just became so apparent. My daughter just said to me yesterday, my grandson is 5 years old and never met Timothy. So he doesn't understand, and they don't understand death or anything.
No, and they shouldn't.
And he said, did Uncle Timmy get hit by a car? So, of course, that's, you know, his thought. But Jamie said, how do I tell him? I said, you be honest. You be honest in his 5-year-old mind, and you tell him what he can understand about what happened. But you never, ever have to change what happened to Timothy in Brendan's eyes. Brendan needs to understand what happened. It was nothing Timothy did wrong. It was nothing anyone in our family did to hurt Timothy. This is what happened. This is how it happened. Or he will not be aware. He won't be. That's prevention. That's prevention at the age of 5.
My grandson, too, was 4 when Thomas died. And just recently, sometimes he'll say, did he get hit by, same thing, did he get hit by a car? And I said, no, Thomas made some choices that were very unhealthy for him, and which led him, you know, down a road that Thomas should not have gone. And he was okay with that explanation.
Well, I thought out the question of did he get hit by a car? And Jamie and I both looked at, why is he saying that? But when you're that little, the only time you ever hear that you could die is don't cross the street without looking, you get hit by a car.
Good point.
So
that's you have to play into
your perception at 5.
You know, and you only answer the question that's asked. You don't need to go into any further explanation.
You know, I have to say, you know, Terry, your point about 6 years ago and about, you know, feeling shunned and that stuff, I truly believe, and I'm sure that there were many, many others, but that I know of. I've been working in the field now for 14 years, and I think that part of the reason why it is the way it is, I think that you play a major part in that, and I think that the Chiappas play a major part in that, because I remember back when Natalie Chiappa passed away, and I remember them going and doing school forums, and when I go back into my memory and I think about the first people that I remember speaking out about the loss of a loved one, it was you, and the Chiapas, and I think that it wasn't popular. It wasn't something that people did regularly. And look, I'll speak for myself. I'm a person in long-term recovery. In the beginning, I was not about to go in front of a camera and say I'm a person in long-term recovery. I did it when I testified at the Senate hearings. I did it when I have no problem. The other day on Channel 12, the same thing. Because if we're talking about beating the stigma, right, if all that people hear about addiction is people robbing and stealing and doing this and doing that, what about if you see somebody who is able to be a father, who is able to be successful, who's able to do things?
Absolutely.
And you start, like, I remember the first time I heard the Chiapas, right? And I say this all the time. When I close my eyes, I'm 53 years old. I grew up in the city. And when I close my eyes and I think about heroin or addiction to heroin, the image that I have is very different than what the reality is today. When they had the picture of Natalie, and when I've seen the picture of your son in that ski outfit, that's not what I think of.
You know, look,
right.
Here's
Lindsay is not what you think of. She is a beautiful young lady. That's not what you associate with it.
Thomas.
There you go.
I mean, they're babies that they shouldn't be. It's funny, I walked with
But nobody
Mr.
should be,
Chiappa.
even though
no one.
they're babies. And
no one.
And that's the case. But I also, I know you very often say that it was the Chiappas and myself. It was really my son. My son reported the doctor when nobody would report a doctor.
Yes.
Nobody would say those things. And that's what led me to this path, was the events, obviously, but also the idea that Timothy was strong enough to say, you know what, I have a problem and I need help. And if this is how I'm going to get it.
Obligation to
absolutely.
pick
absolutely.
up where he left off.
Right.
The Chiappas, I walked with Mr. Chiappa the other day, and he said, I said, did you ever imagine that this would ever happen? And he said, you know, it's been a long road. And they were very vocal, like you just said, and they did school forums, and less people came, and they did fundraising, and no one was showing up. And they said, just for their own mental health and well-being, they had to shut it down for a while. And now they'll come out, but they have to be careful, and they
take care of themselves.
Yes, they take care of themselves
But they started
first.
something that is unstoppable.
Yes.
So it's okay to retire.
Yes.
And let somebody else pick up where you have to stop.
All three of us will be doing the same thing.
Exactly.
There'll be a day, it was funny because one of the women was there from Phoenix House, one of the VPs, I'm not sure what her role is, she's an administrative role, and she had a son. And I went over, I said, listen, I'm going to need somebody to take over one day, so, you know, like, start, you know, listen up, because I'm going to be looking to pass the baton on one day. And that's the reality of it. But here's the other piece. Johanna, which you guys know, she brought her kid yesterday, and she was at a meeting with me this morning, and Johanna said, you know what, the stigma has been so bad, and now it's not as much. Not to say it's good, but she said, I brought my daughter there because I want her being exposed to this. I want her knowing about this. And it was great, and again, I'm going to give you kudos on this other one about what you did at Tanner Park, because it really opened up the idea of it being less threatening, right? Like when you do sometimes drug and alcohol forums, right? There's a stigma that's associated with it. That
I don't have that
if
problem.
anybody's going there, it's because they have a problem.
Yes.
And when you do something like this here, so we had the kids section, we had a live band, we had food, we had different things that people were able to come. And you know the other thing about this? I was looking, because Nora took a whole bunch of pictures. I could not believe how many smiles I saw.
Oh, healthy smiles.
I could not believe how many smiles. Here we are at an event like this here, and rather than it being kind of doom and gloom, right, there was smiles. There were people saying, we want our voices to be heard. We're coming out against this, and feeling like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. I can tell you, for me, that's been a drug in and of itself. Feeling that you can make a difference, right, and feeling that you're a part of something bigger than you is something that to me has been very luring.
Well, I know the parents, Terry, you know, like at Christmas time last year, we have people, we get together because within our group, we can laugh and cry and scream and we can do whatever we want to do. and no one judges us. Because, you know, believe it or not, which is, and this is sad to say, when people see you sometimes and they say, why is she smiling? Her son died. Well, you know, the reality is, unfortunately, tomorrow's going to come whether you want it to or not. Yeah. So it's how I choose to get up in the morning that's going to make my life happen or not happen. So
well, someone told me in the beginning when Tib first lost his life, you cried every day. You cried every single day.
Yes.
You woke up in the morning and you wondered how you fell asleep and didn't cry while you were sleeping. And you pick your lead heart up off the ground and you start your day. And as the days have gone on, it's gotten a little bit easier, or I've gotten stronger to pick my heart up in the morning and get on with my day. But this person told me, you know, you'll cry every day, and then you won't cry every day. And you'll think, oh gosh, remember when Tim did that silly thing to his sister, or, you know, whatever. And then you start to giggle, and you think, oh, you know, we had such a good time. There's always good times in someone's life.
You know,
you find those times,
death
and
is
they're
this
just
big,
more obvious,
and their life is this
exactly.
big. So what do you know, your mind goes where you send it. So why not send it to the day they were born, to the day that Thomas cut his sister's bangs all the way up here?
Right.
You know.
And I hear you talking about that a lot, how he taught his brother how to pee on the fence, and
Yeah.
how he taught his brother.
Well,
but I have to tell you, Linda, you know, like, you know, I'm talking about Terry, but, you know, I think about you as well, like being this warrior of going out there and you know, because people react to trauma and to grief differently.
Yeah.
You know, and there's
Right.
not a right way or a wrong way.
No,
it's not to
absolutely
say
not.
that you guys do this and it's the right way or the wrong way, and the person who's not doing it
It's
is
different.
doing it wrong. It's different, exactly, that's it. But I will tell you that, you know, when you take your pain and you turn it into action, right? Like there was a woman, I had a meeting before I came here, and this woman wants to start a
I'm
scholarship.
going to hold your story.
You got it.
And we'll be right back after this message.
There you go.
Stretching under sedation or manipulation under anesthesia is a very gentle, very precise procedure to very slowly release any scar tissue that is formed as a result of a traumatic injury. Many people ask, how does this work? Will I get hurt? Will you stretch me too far? We only stretch the body part to its normal range of motion. After completing the post-MUA rehabilitation program, it's very common that our patients say to us, hey, I can play ball with my kid again. Hey, I can bowl again. Hey, I can enjoy hiking again. This is what makes it rewarding to us as practitioners.
Hi, I'm Tatiana, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from heroin addiction. It was really, really hard, waking up in the morning, not knowing what to do, needing my next bag. I was so lost, but I'm here today to tell you that there is a solution. When I was in my active addiction, I didn't realize that there was another way of life. I thought that that was the only way, because it felt so good to get high, but it was all an illusion, and I didn't realize that. But today, being 4 years clean and sober, my life is absolutely amazing. I'm able to travel, I don't need a drink, I don't need a drug. I'm just happy being with myself. I couldn't understand for many years why was I doing this? It's because I was an addict, but I didn't know it. Today, many kids are becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol, but they don't know exactly what they're getting into until they're out of it. And it's our job, it's my job, to stand for these kids, stand for their recovery, and fight for their addiction. So I'm the president of Onward Forever, and I provide recovery services and support. And we're here to help. We're here to just listen. Anything that we can do to help. If you need me, this is how you get a hold of me. Please call 347-244-1550. 347-244-1550. I developed this company to help you, our families, and our community to fight this crisis on Long Island and in our nation. Thank you.
we're back, and we're back with my guests, Anthony Rizzuto and Terry Kroll, and you're going to finish your thought on.
So this woman that I was having a meeting with today, she lost her son, I think it was about a year ago, and she wants to start a scholarship. She was actually at the event yesterday, one of the women working the registration, and she was saying, we were talking about the event, and she said, that really helped me a lot. She said that was kind of therapeutic for me,
Yes.
to be out there and being part of doing something. She's like, this is what works for me. Me staying home and looking at photo albums and stuff like that, it's just destroying me. So I think that the more that we can, people can take action, if that's what they choose to do, because again, everyone is at a different
and
phase.
when
Right.
they choose to do it.
Yep.
There's a time to be quiet.
Mhm.
Isn't it part of a 12-step program, though, when you take me out of it? When you do for others other than yourself, you're always going to feel better.
As a person in recovery, I will tell you that one of the strongest weapons that a person in recovery has against relapse and against cravings is working with others, is being able to help other people, because when you're helping other people, you're out of your head. And, there's, without getting into the particular fellowships, there is a saying that what we have is not a cure, but we have a daily reprieve contingent on our spiritual fitness. And part of that spiritual fitness is looking out for others. So when you help other people, it kind of gets you out of here, and it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're serving a purpose, like you're doing something good. And I see that. I see that with a lot of the people that are doing service towards other people. So it's been a real positive experience.
It's nice, when we have all the parents that they can smile, they can cry at a moment's notice.
Mhm.
Somebody's just going to hug them, and life, right, Terry? It just continues on.
And you don't have to say what's...
You don't have to say anything, because we all know what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a great example. I called Terry, what was it, last Thursday, and your unfortunate, that day was Saturday. How you doing, Terry? I'm okay. No, you're not. So why are you even saying that? Because I can say that to her. A lot of other people from the outside get very uncomfortable.
It's like that old
right.
If I start talking about Timothy and everybody goes silent.
Yes.
They're the ones that are not comfortable with their own grief of the loss of Timothy.
Yes.
So and they're in my own family. And I try to make them realize that it's okay for us to talk about Timothy. It's actually cathartic. And some of them have come to realize over the years that, you know what, we don't have to all shush up.
But it's so, if you concentrate on a period of time in their life that was not a good time. I'll speak for myself. Thomas is this big, and his life is this big, and there was much more happiness than there was sadness. So how can I not acknowledge all the happiness that he brought me?
You just reminded me of something. I was facilitating a group one day, and I had a new person that came in the group that day. And the way I used to do it was anytime there was a new member, I'd have the existing members introduce themselves to the new member, and then I have the new member introduce themselves. So we're going around the room, and this guy says, yeah, my name is, and I'm an addict. And, I've heard that 1,000 times, but for some reason that day it rubbed me the wrong way. So I let them finish, and then the new person introduced themselves. And I said, I get it. I get the idea of, like, in the fellowships, they don't ever want you to forget, that you are an addict or that you are an alcoholic. You should never forget that. But I have to tell you, it just made me feel uncomfortable when you said that. It was almost as I'm identifying myself as that's what I am. And I said,
and that's what I'll always be.
You're a father.
Right.
You're a son. You're a brother. You're an employee. And
oh, by the way.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And so what I said was just something to think about, in the future. My name is, and I struggle with, with this here. But that's not who I am, as opposed to I'm an, like as if that defines you.
And I think when you do define yourself by that word, that it should keep you in the present moment, that I struggle with this disease every single day and I have to work my steps. But I'm always, why can't I could be now a college graduate. I could be a great employee. I could be, why limit yourself? Because I feel like people limit themselves then. the sky is the limit, and the world, you know, could be at your feet if you so choose to put yourself there.
Right.
So the words
that's
that you
your
speak to
perception.
yourself,
Right.
very powerful.
Yeah, the self-talk that a person in the grips of addiction is not good.
Right.
Most of the times the self-talk, remember, to me, addiction is a symptom of the problem. It's not the problem. And often what I find is people that struggle with the disease of addiction, when you help them to achieve abstinence, that's when the problem starts coming up to the head. Some cases it could be depression, it could be anxiety. Some cases it could just be, I'm really shy. And when I drink, it makes it a little easier for me to socialize. It could be low self-esteem, could be insecurities, whatever. The bottom line is that it's meeting a need for you. So what I find is that if people don't go ahead and make the change, that's why I'm constantly talking about abstinence doesn't equal recovery. You know, abstinence is an essential piece, meaning that I no longer put the substance in my body. But if that's all you do, my experience is that that doesn't sustain. Because part of going from abstinence to recovery is developing the coping mechanisms to be able to deal with life on life's terms.
Whatever brought you to that point.
Right. Just last night I was saying, because
And life is going to knock you down.
Well, this is what I said. I said, here's the fear, and because this one mom was saying, I'm really concerned. My daughter is in a program. She's been abstinent now for 5 months, but I really don't see her doing what I hear that she's supposed to do. She's doing everything she needs to do to stay within the rules of the program, but I don't see her going that extra mile. And here's the concern with that. Let's just use this scenario. When her boyfriend, if the boyfriend one day decides to say, I'm leaving you, right? How's she dealing with rejection?
Right.
When,
Right.
God forbid, somebody that she loves gets cancer, how is she going to deal with that? She no longer has the luxury of, or the ability to be able to put a pill in her mouth or a drink in her mouth, because a person that struggles with addiction can't moderate how much they use. So a person, let's use alcohol. A person that doesn't have a problem with alcohol, they have 1 drink, they have 2 drinks, they have 3 drinks, they're fine. But a person that struggles with addiction, it is easier to do none than it is to try and do some. It's kind of like the Lay's potato chip thing.
I'm like that with Oreo cookies.
There you go.
If I eat
You don't
one,
have the
I'm
shut
eating
off.
to sleep.
Right. Right.
You know, and that's, and I acknowledge that,
Yeah.
you know, so, but I think, you know,
There
we
was a
made,
time when you didn't, well, for us in particular. That explanation is really something that is just like lighting a bulb in my head right now. But society doesn't realize that you can't just say stop and you don't won't do it anymore.
you know, we've talked
You
about
can't
that.
just
It's a
have
moral
10
failing.
days,
People look
right.
at it as a moral failing. It is not a moral failing.
And it's a
not
long-term
anything.
recovery. It's not. It doesn't
Right.
happen overnight. Even with us, with Timothy, and I tell people this all the time because I hope they don't fall into this same situation. We were under the impression 30 days, he's good, get him into a
I
a
thought
job,
that at the very
go to
beginning
work,
also.
he'll be great. That's not necessarily true. For some it may be, but for some it may not be. So I think society needs to realize, for the ones that it's not, it's okay that their treatment is going to take 6 months or a year. Just like the cancer patient's treatment could be 12 treatments,
You know-
could be 36 treatments.
So with cancer, what's the magic? 5 year, right? You have
Right.
to get past 5 years. What if they gave
Imagine
people
that.
struggling with the disease of addiction
Imagine
a
that.
5-year window not to relapse?
Yeah. Let me know what insurance company will cover that.
Yeah.
Because I want to sign
Yeah,
up with that.
exactly.
But here's, you know, to your point that you're saying, I think that the scenarios I use sometimes when I'm working with families, I give them the perspective of the person that's in the grips of it, right? So you got 2 guys that are saying, we're going to go to the bar, we're going to watch the first half of the game, we're going to order some wings and have a couple of beers. So they go to the game, they go to the bar, they order a couple of beers, they're having some wings, they're watching the game. One of the guys looks at the watch, says, yo, we got to get out of here. And the other guy says, well, what? What are you talking about? We just got started here. He's like, no, we got to go to work tomorrow, you know? And they leave, right? And they leave. The one guy goes home, goes to sleep, gets up the next day, goes to work. The other guy hits 7-Eleven, gets a 12-pack, goes home, keeps the party going, doesn't make it to work the next day, and then feels like, damn, I just got to try better. My buddy, that's my best friend. He's able to just have two, and I should be able to do that. What am I, not man enough? Right. What am I, not strong enough? I just got to try. And they start trying all these different, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to drink liquor anymore. I'm only going to drink beer. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to drink Heineken. I'm only going to drink Coors Light. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to eat first so that it doesn't affect, and keep trying to figure out how can I moderate it. And for the longest period of time, they are trying, rather than saying, I just can't mess with this, right? Because nobody wants to say that, right? So you keep trying to figure out, how can I get back to social use, right? I always talk about experimentation, social use, misuse, abuse, and dependence. It's a process, right? Some people experiment, never go any further. Some people go to social use. This is great. I like this. When people get here, they start having consequences. And when they start having these consequences, and it's not limited to here, sometimes it could be here, but when the consequences start coming, the first thought is not, I'm just not going to drink anymore. The first thought is, you know what, I gotta be smarter. I got to go back to social use and just drink on the weekends or whatever.
But that switch is turned on.
Well, when they go over here and they finally come to this realization, like, damn, like it's easier for me to do none than it is to try and do some. Now, to your point.
But that's only with alcohol.
That's with alcohol.
Right. Because anything else that, you know, there was someone who said to us when Tim first went into the hospital, oh, you know, I use drugs, but I have it under control. I just use it socially. Yeah, but it's still not legal. Yeah. You know, it's still deadly. Right. I guess alcohol is not, but you know. But
the point that I'm making is
still the biggest killer.
Yeah, yeah. The point that I'm making is more about the inability to control how much they use.
I understand that.
So that goes across the board. That's not limited. But the problem that a person has is that, and a family member, right? So how many times, and you guys that are family members, how many times has the words come out, if you really love me, you just wouldn't do it anymore, right?
Right.
And that stop. That comes from a place of ignorance, just not knowing about what the disease of addiction is.
Correct.
Especially when you see that the kid down the block that he played lacrosse with for 3 years is able to do something and then go home and doesn't go beyond that. So that's where the frustration comes in. And for the person who's in the grips of it, I want to be that person. I want to be the person that can just hang out on Friday night.
And then you have those little that voice. I know that Thomas always, you know, you're not good enough. See, you can't do it. See, you still want it. You see, you know, just go ahead.
But how healthy were those guys there Sunday, and gals? Oh. How healthy looking were they? They are in early recovery, all of them.
Right.
Well, you know,
Tatiana Green's
and they showed
up there
on
Saturday, Sunday, and just,
yeah. So it's awesome. So let's talk
about
to hug them all. I think I did. I hugged a lot of people. September 16th? Is that the date?
September 16th. Perfect.
Is that a Wednesday
night? To celebrate recovery. It's a Wednesday night at Tanner Park.
Where is Tanner
in Copiague.
Park?
It's on the beach in Copiague.
Okay.
The Beach Hut is opening up their doors to a sober night. I'm hoping for some nice weather, some volleyball, and all the people that I saw on Sunday, I'd love to see them there.
Is that a weekend? Is that a?
It's a Wednesday evening. It's what's it generally called, Hump Day?
Yeah.
Right.
So come out and enjoy some
and still enjoy
good fun, good music.
The end of summer. Summer will continue.
Yeah, a fundraiser for LICAD,
Long Island Council on Alcohol and Drug Dependency.
There's a donation. People want to give a donation, but just
live music,
come out and have fun.
And just fun.
Yeah.
So on Sunday we showed Long Island and a lot of families how to have fun without substances.
And on that note, Rock and Recovery. Right?
Rock and Recovery.
Rock and Recovery is up to, I believe it's the 7th or the 8th one. I think this might be either the 7th or the 8th one.
And that's September 25th.
Right. And that's going to be at St. Peter's in Huntington Station. It'll go from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. It is a blast. Every year we get somewhere about 300 people that show up.
Now,
there's music, there's food, there's
it's for people in recovery. There's no registration. There's no anything.
Just
free food, free music, just come and celebrate recovery. Come and celebrate the people that you are.
Right, and it's interesting, you go into it, it's so funny because I find myself saying this so many times. You get 300 people in there, right, and there's a DJ going and there's just a blast. The food is great, having a real good time. And I'm saying like, wow, if you threw 2 kegs into this party, it would change the whole dynamics. There'd be probably at least 5 to 10 fights tonight.
Yes.
And in the 7 years, there has never been one incident in the 7 years. And I truly believe that's because of the fact that it's a sober event.
And you don't have to watch everybody going out the door to make sure they're okay to
Yeah.
drive.
They're okay to
Yeah,
drive.
that's
Absolutely.
true.
So we have some great things coming up, and that's here on Long Island. And I would urge people all over the country to look. There's Young People in Recovery, YPR, with chapters all over the United States. Any other for young people? Because, you know, we have this generation
I want to speak to that for a second.
coming into recovery. And I will tell you that a lot of young people I talk to, you know, it sucks that I can't go out to a club.
Right.
That I can't go and, you know, and do that.
Let me tell you, somebody called me the other day. I was talking to somebody after the event the next day, and they were saying, "Oh, it was awesome. Oh, it was. I was running a support group on Monday night, and some of the people from the support group had come, and she said, you know, it was awesome. We had a great time, but like, you know, you read off those names, and we were crying and all of this, and then when they read off the names of the people in recovery, right? Like we were saying to each other, yeah, but those people are older, and it was alcohol or it was cocaine. And I said, no. I said there was 2 young ladies there in their 20s, and they read off the names of a lot of people. And then I went on to tell her that I think that this is one of the most exciting, as much as there's devastation for people between the ages of 17 and 27, right, like what's out there, I've never seen as many things in place. YPR, right, Young People in Recovery, they do conferences, right, Licky Paw, which is the alcohol portion of it, as opposed to Nicky Paw, which is the narcotics portion of it. They do conferences, and they get 5,000 people.
Yes.
I mean, so to me, that's a big piece. When I first got sober many years ago, one of the things that was common was opening up what they would call like a sober club.
Right.
So you would go to a place, there was no alcohol served, they'd have juices, there was dancing, there was all kinds of different things. Now we've kind of got away from that, but there's a lot of these kind of things that young people do. They go to listen to music together, and they hang out together.
Sports.
Yeah.
Sports.
Yeah.
Anything.
Rafting.
You know,
I see pictures of kids rafting. You know,
and
I
but
look
there's
at that
that
and I see
awkwardness
there
that
is that
young
awkwardness.
people will remember.
But I also see the pictures I've seen recently of people in YPR and other groups of actually just having pure fun. So I look at the pictures and I think, are we putting a stigma on that by saying, oh, we can have fun without alcohol? Is that a stigma? You know, we can have fun without drugs. We could just have fun.
Period.
We could just be people.
Yes.
And the drugs and alcohol that have affected our society shouldn't have any place in that. Shouldn't have any place at all in that. We should just be able to say, we're just out having fun. Just having a good time.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the idea of, let's just say, weight, right? So there's this idea of what the ideal person is supposed to look like, right? And if you're a little bit heavier than that, right, you start feeling self-conscious that I'm not good enough. I'm not as pretty
This
as her.
is society's idea of what I am supposed to be.
And I think that a natural span in the development of a human being, right, when you're at 13 years old and you're starting to become an individual and you don't think you look good enough, or you don't, and unfortunately we know that there's a lot of bullying that happens, and when you're going through those really uncomfortable feelings, right, drugs and alcohol work. And that's why I see a lot of times people turn to it. One of the things I've always wanted to do when I first went to school was create a program to address the underlying issues. So for instance, if we were to do a study and take a look at 16-year-olds that smoke pot or drink alcohol, right, and we were to break it down and take a look at when they first started it, and what were the feelings that they were going through. A lot of the times, a lot of the kids that I worked with, they would tell me, you know what? I wasn't part of the crowd.
Yeah.
And if I smoke a joint, I automatically fit in the crowd. And I wanted to be a part of. I didn't want to be outside the group. And it just seemed like a lot of kids did that. Now, were there other kids? There was like, at least I don't know if they even do that anymore, but when I was growing up, you had the jocks. Right?
Yes.
You had the athletes, you had the kids that played sports, and then you had the other kids who drank and did other things. And then you had I guess they would call them the nerds, right?
Yes.
And, you know, if you wanted to, if you didn't belong in a group, it really sucked to be like an
You
outsider.
find your own dysfunctional group to
I
belong
remember
to.
being in high school, and I never drank or smoked or did any kind of drugs. And I remember being in high school and going to those parties with the football players, and there would be drinking. And my boyfriend and I would go in with Yoo-hoo. And people would at first look at you like, what the hell are you doing? You know, what the heck, coming in with Yoo-hoo? But by the middle of the party, and we're having just as much fun, and we're drinking our Yoo-hoo, and we're having a good time. I would hope now, looking back, that there were people there who may have changed their minds about drinking, realizing you just have fun.
Well, that
You
comes
just
down
need to be
being that age and being able to have the
Wherewithal, the self-confidence,
Yeah.
to say,
self-esteem.
no,
It doesn't
I'm
matter
not
if I
drinking.
fit in or not.
Right.
This is me.
I'm going to do
I
what I
drink
need
Yoo-hoo.
to do.
Yeah.
But you know what? The percentage of people that have that,
Oh, I would say there would
You
be
know,
20
and
kids at a party, and it was just 2 of us that
I
weren't.
think that we have to start with 5-year-olds and building self-esteem and giving them, supporting them all the way up through their elementary. You know, people used to say, I used to think myself, well, you know, I'm divorced, maybe that, you know, my parents died. There was trauma in our family. Yes, did that add to? Without a question in my mind. But you didn't have divorce. You know, so I can look at many different families
right?
and say it doesn't make any sense. Thomas didn't have the shut-off valve, and that's what it was. And he wasn't educated enough. I think that kids coming up through school, everybody needs a go-to person. Everyone needs a go-to person.
Yeah.
And
And
we need to identify those ones that slip through the cracks.
I'll go back again for a second. When I was in high school, I was a senior, had a car, went to pick up my friend, who I know used drugs, and I knew she also sold them. But she was my friend, and I went to pick her up, and she got in the car laughing. And she was a year younger than me. What's so funny? She said, "You're never going to believe what my mother just said." So what did your mother say? My mother
That bad
said,
influence.
"You better not hang around with that older girl. She's a bad influence." If she only knew
If she only knew.
what a good influence you are, Terry.
Right,
But see, that's
right.
that's a stigma.
That's
You
a
know,
stigma.
like
And I'll give you the antithesis of that. Now, I was an honor student. I was all of that. But, you know, not that I drank, but if I do this, I'll be okay. If I do this, I'm grounded for the next, or my father's going to kill me. Hey, let's go do this. But all my friends' parents would say, Linda's such an excellent student. She's an athlete. Hang out with her. And my friends would be like, if you
If
only
they only
knew.
knew, yeah. And you know, probably my guess is that maybe her mom found something and she said, "It's not
It's
mine,
Terry's."
Ma, it's Terry's. I'm holding it for
she
Terry."
might have
But you
helped
know,
me out to try or something.
Linda, when
yeah.
I was in school to become a counselor, we would take a look at cases where, you know, what we know today is we know that there's 2 main parts when it comes to addiction. We know that there is an environmental component, and we know that there's a genetic component. Those are the 2 things that we associate with a lot of people that struggle with addiction. Maybe not 100% of them, especially today with the idea of a person blowing out a knee, getting 90 Percocet, giving them something that, you know, and them getting addicted to them. But one of the things that we noticed is how come these kids grew up in the same environment that those kids, but these kids had a problem and those didn't. And one of the things that we put a finger on is something called resiliency. And we always wanted to figure out how to develop the resiliency in people. And that's one of the pieces that we look at a lot. Like, how come there were people that experienced the 9/11 situation,
Yeah.
right? And just really, like, had a really, really hard time with it. And the person that was next to them, right,
It's okay.
was okay. And what's that all about? You know,
Right.
they experience it. People go to war, right, and they come back here, and the reaction
Well,
to it
you
is
know, we can
differently.
talk about Unbroken, but we're going to have to take that to another show because look at that gentleman, right? That soldier
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
who
Very
could not be
powerful.
broken.
Yep.
Recovery is possible. Recovery happens every day, and Terry and I just want to, you know, also speak to all the parents that maybe are struggling. There's help, there's hope, there's always recovery. Don't give up. And we're going to look to do a lot more things If you need any of the flyers, please feel free to message me on Facebook, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. Enjoy the Labor Day weekend.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony and Terry. Forgot that part.
Another dark hotel